respecting the time that you are given. In normal demo days, when they tell you it's 5 minutes, they will cut you at 5 minutes, right? And if you're not able to relay to investors or the people sitting hearing about your company in terms of what you do, then you'll probably lose the opportunity for you to even create interest from them to look at your company as an investment opportunity, right? So, actually, some technical issues. I think maybe lama kot. Yeah, ni kan.
Oh,
yeah.
Sebab dia dekat.
Okay, all right, cool.
Alright, okay.
All right. So experience-wise, again, I wear two caps, two hats. One as an investor myself, and also as a person that runs the equity crowdfunding platform, which means I've seen quite a fair amount of presentation slides now, right? And also listened to a lot of presentation, right? Some of them catch my interest from the beginning. Some of them, until the end, I probably don't know what they're doing, right? It all depends on how you actually run your presentation. So I've listened and heard more than 1,000 presentation, and out of those presentation, I've done 100 investment, either personally or through the Watchtower and Friends or through pitching, right? Having said that, I always feel that learning how to present is an ongoing learning activity, right? Even right now, even I myself, when I was preparing my own presentation to pitch to investors, my own fundraising using equity crowdfunding, and also during my round of talking to VCs and whatnot, I still had to go through other presentation slides, learning from other people, going into YouTube, watching the presentation videos of other people presenting, right? Because again, like I said, there is no right or wrong, right? It's probably what suits you best in terms of your businesses, in terms of how you yourself as a founder are able to stand in front of a group of people and present your idea. So one book which I thought was really, really good in terms of understanding the different modes of presentation, and probably the best presenter of all that I've seen in terms of captivating the crowd, because for him, whenever he presents, there is a story behind it, right? And I think no one is a better storyteller in terms of presenting products and whatnot than Steve Jobs, right? So if you're able to actually get this particular book, I would really encourage you to buy it if you can. Because I think it will guide you, not just for this particular session, but also in the future when you're trying to raise more funding, right? So that's one thing which I want to share, learn from the best. And I think Steve Jobs is probably one of the best. The book by Carmine Gelloni is written quite nicely. That it covers the essence of how Steve Jobs come up with ideas before he does his presentation. Now, before we dive into each slide, right, I also just want to share with you things that I think every founder, presenter needs to prepare themselves. The worst thing that can happen to you when you're presenting or after you're presenting is that you don't really know the full facts of your company. So again, I know this is quite basic, quite fundamental, but I do come across a lot of founders and companies, especially when the founders are presenting, they don't really have a full grasp of the company, and most of it is financials, right? So you need to have some basic knowledge of the financials in terms of how you make money, how much out of those revenue, which is profit and cost and whatnot, right? So these are things which I think every founder need to know. Of course, when investors wants to drill down on the finer details, then you could have your financial person to be there with you. But you should know the basic information about your financials. So knowing your fact, is probably the most important thing, especially when you want to convince people to invest in you, right? The other thing which I also want to prep founders is to be prepared mentally and emotionally. The worst thing that could happen to us as founders is someone saying no, and sometimes rejection is probably difficult to accept, especially when you know that you're working on something great. Your company is going to change the way people behave, change the landscape of a certain industry. So hence, we think that people should invest in our company, right? So rejection, and I've actually received rejection from friends who are VCs, and I don't take it lightly, right? So you start to question yourself, what's missing, what's from your company, what's missing from your presentation, did I see anything wrong and whatnot, right? But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes people just don't feel it's the right mix or right good mixture for them to invest in you. So be prepared mentally and emotionally to receive rejection. I can probably say that there will be a lot of rejections than acceptance, right? And that's why I love this quote by Mark Cuban about fundraising. So he had this quote that says that every no gets me closer to a yes, right? So that also pushes me when we were fundraising. So yes, I'll be getting all this no, but once I get the no and once I get to know why is it a no, we improve ourselves, and hopefully sooner or later someone will say yes, right? So it drives you to actually work on your pitch, work on your presentation, so that in the end someone would say yes, right? So don't give up, just be prepared mentally and emotionally. So for every presentation session that we do, especially even demo day, right? I think the understanding by a founder, and I don't blame them, is that just based on this presentation, people will then start giving me money. Unfortunately, it does not work that way, right? What you want to do during a presentation session is really an invitation, right? For people to then approach you, to talk to you in more detail about your company, which will then lead to a due diligence and compliance before they actually invest in you, right? So I always feel that presentation sessions, be it even a demo day, is really an opportunity for you, the founders, to articulate what the opportunity for investors to invest in you. Yeah, so it's really an invitation, right? If they buy into your company or your pitch, that's when the real stuff happens, right? So that's when the meeting happens, either at your place or their place. They drill you for more information. Once they like, they will probably then give you a term sheet, which is really the first step towards an investment. But before the investment happens and after the term sheet is given to you, that's when the due diligence and compliance will happen. And during due diligence compliance, they will strip you naked, right? In terms of the company, they want to know inside out how you make money, even to the minute details of your margins of every product or service that you do, right? So the goal of every presentation, be it demo day or even a normal presentation, is to secure that meeting to move forward, right? So if people are interested and approach you after a meeting wanting to know more about your company, then you've succeeded in terms of getting that interest from these people, right? So if there is no interest, and sometimes you see that during demo day, right? After demo day, 10 of you pitch, and lepas tu kan you can see a group of people going towards 7, 8 other companies. Yang dua ni no one gets approached, right? And you can see on your own, right? And then you as a founder will feel that you feel so downcast, right? And when you see all your peers get interest, people are going towards them. So it's very visual. So the emotional punya impact itu is real when you see that, right? In fact, even if someone approaches you, maybe just one person, but you see your peer, 5-6 orang, beratur nak jumpa dia kan, like, what the hell, right? So it impacts you as founders too, right? But it doesn't mean that based on the people yang keliling diorang ni, doesn't mean that eventually they will get funding, because there's still a long way to go. The due diligence, the compliance, the meetings that you need to do, right? So the goal is really to secure a meeting, right? Even if you secure one meeting, that's good enough for you to move forward with your fundraising, right? Yeah, so to do yes. Oh, not a question. Okay, right. I thought a question. Right. All right. So to do all that, right, to secure this meeting, to secure the interest of the company, of the investors, right? So that's where the pitch deck will be very, very important, right? So like I said, it depends on how long you are given. I was told by Amira that for this particular demo day is 5 minutes. I assume the filtering process will also be 5 minutes, right? So you have 5 minutes to talk about your company, right? Some other event gives you 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, but I think no one gives you more than 10 minutes, right? If it's more than 10 minutes, then it becomes not really a pitching session, but a storytelling session, right? But how we do it, even with 5, 7, or 8 minutes, or even 10 minutes, is really using that small amount of time period to tell a story, but within a shorter time period. So that's why the story needs to be prepared in a way that will capture the imagination and interest of the investors listening to your presentation, right? So if you're presenting for 5 minutes, the first 1 or 2 minutes is very, very important, right? So even the introduction of your company when you are presenting will be very important. If you lose them within 1 2 minutes, you will not get them in that last 3 minutes. In the end, they will just look at you and blankly, right? Potentially you will lose that opportunity to actually attract them to have that further meeting with yourself, right? So I know the time frame is 5 minutes, and typically when you think about 5 minutes, then probably you need 5 slides or 6 slides or 7 slides. But then I've seen founders, right, being able to present within 5 minutes, even when they're using 10 to even 15 slides, right? For me, just to, again, later on when we finish this presentation, right, when you look at these 13 topics, right, you could actually merge some of them together, right? But my objective for this particular session, right, is really to fish out the 13 important things that every investor are looking for. Some of this information can be married together, hence you don't really need to have 13 slides. You can actually size it down even to 5 slides or 6 slides or 7 slides, right? So it depends on how you want to do it. But what's important is that we try to cover all this information as much as possible to the investors, because these are basically what investors are looking for before they decide whether they want to have that second meeting with you, right? So let's go, so we will go slide by slide in terms of every subject matter, right? But before that, just want to share with you some of the do's and don'ts in terms of your prepping and your pitching session, right? First is really about engaging people emotionally, right? And that's where sometimes I feel the business-minded founder does better than technical-based founders. And that's really because how they are trained, right? Technical founders are trained A, B, C, D, E. Tak ada hitam, tak ada gray area, is hitam or putih. The business people, sometimes putih can be black, black can be putih, and sometimes it can be gray. And that's why they're easy to actually tell a story as compared to an engineer, right? I'm not saying all engineers, but you know, engineers are trained in a way, right? Whereas business people are either someone from the legal training or business training and whatnot. The way they are trained in universities, how they learn is a bit different. and that's why they can a bit more flexible in terms of how they engage people emotionally. Academicians and the technical side, sometimes they don't have emotion. They're like, no, when they talk too much about the emotion, right? And sometimes that's why they lose people when they talk to investors when they pitch. But all this can be changed by training, right? So some of you, maybe this is the first time you are presenting publicly. So maybe you need more time. But I think the first experience doing this particular demo day with PISA can be the best way to start, right? But again, like I said, it takes training. Even though I've listened and done so many presentations myself, I still have to exercise, do my own pitching to friends and family members before I actually do the actual pitch, right? So engaging people emotionally during the presentation is very, very important, right? The next thing is limiting each slide to expressing one idea, right? You want people to, you want investors when they listen to you, not to be thrown so many information at the same time in one slide, right? Because sometimes it's difficult for people to swallow everything in one go, right? And that's why I feel that in terms of cleanliness and to be very precise and objective, it's good to actually limit each slide to express one idea. So if you're focusing on, say, go to market, let that slide be go to market and not jumble it with other things which may not be related to that, right? Because it may throw off people when they're listening to you. Yeah? So as I mentioned again, making the first impression is very, very important, especially when you stand up and do your introduction to your company. Later, I'll share with you what I think commonly works. But the first 1 minute when you're presenting, right, and introducing your company is very, very important to attract people to listen and really focus on what you want to say about your company, right? If you make your company uninteresting to the people listening to you in the first 1 or 2 minutes, you will probably lose interest in what they do. They will probably lose interest in terms of what you do, right? The other thing is this, and this is something which I would probably say that it depends on the style of your presentation. Some people like to show the people behind the company at the end. Some people prefer to have it in the beginning. The majority of all presenters, if you do a study of all the presentation slides, most of them like to have it at the end, right? I actually love to see it in the beginning, right? Because it's a story, right? So the story is about this company, how it's being built, and how we will move forward, right? I always like in the beginning to know who the people behind the company that will be responsible to do X, Y, Z to get this company from A to Z, right? Sometimes when you talk about the company and how it grew and how it will be growing, baru dah habis cerita, baru I tahu siapa pelakon-pelakon di belakang companies ini. Normally, if you look at movies, they will tell you who the pelakon is, right? And that's what my preference is. But again, there is no hard and fast rule. It's just a matter of preference. Because for me, when I sit and listen, I want to know who the players are or the pelakon are very early so that I know when you talk about this, talk about that, I already have a visual of who this person that will be doing this, right? But like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? It's just that by far the majority prefer to put the company, the people behind it at the back, right? This is again just following up from what I mentioned just now. Knowing your metrics is very, very important. You should know your numbers. The worst thing that can happen when a presentation is happening and during Q&A and one of the investor or judges asks you a question about your numbers and you don't know, that's a red flag for anyone, right? That tells me that the founder is not prepared or either they don't really know what's happening with the company, right? So knowing this is very, very important, right? So just like any other pitching session, we want to know why this company was built, what is the problem that you're solving. So in the end, we want to see 80% of the presentation is focused mainly on the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Obviously, you need to talk about the solution too, but we need to know how big is this problem that you intend to build a company surrounding this problem. Because in the end, if the problem is not big enough, then potentially the investment is not there, right? But if the problem is big enough that requires my investment to grow your company, then I think you will then, I will then put my money into your business, right? So focus on 80% of the problem, and then the rest will be on the solution, right? So just side note before we dive deeper into each particular slide, just a word of just FYI, investors sees a lot of business presentation, right? So that's why sometimes they tend to shut down if they don't, if they're not attracted to your presentation during the first 1 or 2 minutes, right? So everyone keeps asking them for things, i.e. money, but they want to know what exactly are you trying to solve, or the problem that you're trying to address, and how big is this problem that you're trying to address, and how their money can actually help them, help you to actually not just address the problem, but also create a larger market for yourself, and later on in terms of how they could exit their business, right? So yeah, so let's start. First, the introduction. So normally when you have your deck, right? So typically you will have your opening deck, your company, your logo, right? And then maybe your tagline, right? I always feel that that would be the best way for you to present, right? So don't straight away jump into a deck which tells people about what your company does, right? I would rather have it simple, the first deck, where you just have your logo and your one company liner, like BB Dash. Their one liner was making parents' lives better. That itself is like intrigue the interest of the investor, right? So if I was an audience when Baby Dash was presenting, right? Now that you caught my interest, so you're telling me that Baby Dash is making parents' life better. So now I want to know how, right? So from the word go, they actually attracted my attention. So with your company, find that tagline, find that tagline that makes people intrigued about what you guys are doing, right? So for example, for you guys, you're developing a system that will help PhD students, right? So find a very catchy way of describing it. Janganlah guna academic punya style language, right? Then people fall asleep, right? So find a way in terms of addressing a problem that with your solution will solve that problem that every potential user or customer that you are targeting will have their problem solved, right? So your logo, your company one-liner, very, very important. If you don't have one, try to find one, right? You have what? How many days to do it? 1 week, right? Yeah. So talk to the Beyond 4 mentors and whatnot to find that particular tagline for your company, right? Now, once you have that tagline, you don't need to actually repeat the tagline when you're presenting, right? The tagline is there. People read it, they understand it, and they're now curious about it. But at the same time, when you're presenting the introduction of your company again, this is what I think every company should do. A really, really short introduction about your company, which goes, and again, you can customize this. Say your company is, whatever it is developing or sales or provide, what is it, the offering that you do to help your audience and then identify your audience. In your case, maybe PhD students or whatnot, to solve a problem, and what's the problem which they are facing with what. And this is what your problem or your solution is, right? In your case, is your system or your technology that you're bringing up, right? So later on, then what you should do is to fill the blanks using this particular text and see how it works, right? And that will be your first introduction of your company when you stand up, present, when you're just starting, right? So you present, your logo is there, your tagline is there. You don't have to repeat your tagline. It's there for people to read. You just introduce yourself and say, my company is so-and-so. We do this, we solve this for the audience, for our audience, which is XYZ, to solve their problem. And that's your opening line before you dive into your second slide, right? So that needs practice. But first, get this right, and you can double check with your mentor within Beyond 4 so that you get your wording correct in terms of explaining what your company does, right? So that to me is the start of the story about your company, right? So once you do that, then once you start your introduction, people already know in briefly and in summary your audience in terms of your users, the problem they are facing, and what are the solutions that you're providing to solve this particular problem that they're having. All covered within that one deck, right? So if you do that very well and you are engaging when you're looking to them in a very engaging manner, your eyes are engaging them, right? That's when you get your investor and the crowd really paying attention to you, because now it's a mystery. I now want to know more. What is it that you actually providing to these people that you're solving their problems for, right? So after that, it's really talking about why you are in the business. Why you are in the business actually to address either a problem or you see an opportunity in the market that needs a solution that you probably have. So every company exists not just because of a problem, right? Some companies exist because there's opportunity. There is a market need for it, right? Like I said, for every branded product, why is it there is other products that's being developed? Because there is demand for other branded products, other quality products, right? So for those other companies, they're not addressing any problem. The Dior's, the Dolce Gabbana and whatnot, and they're not addressing a problem. So if they're addressing a problem, that problem is limited to just a certain amount of people with a lot of money, right? But there is an opportunity because people have money and they want to buy branded stuff, right? That's why in Malaysia, despite all this brand, people like Christy Ng managed to actually develop their own brand, right? So companies sometimes exist because of opportunity, but companies mainly in the technology sector exist because there is a problem that needs to be addressed, and that problem is big enough, and you guys have the solution, which is technology-based, that could actually help to short circuit in terms of how people addresses this particular issue, right? So you need to explain what the problem they're trying to solve. You need to inform your crowd or your audience in terms of how big is this pain? Is it a pain that you yourself experience, which probably not a big pain in terms of the market, but is it a pain that you see commonly seen throughout the industry, right? So for example, because I spend time with them, the pain which they're addressing is the pain that is being seen or faced by PhD students, master's students, right? So it's a big pain enough that people may want to actually pay for their services or their product, right? Then you want to explain to them how is this problem currently being addressed, right? And why are those existing solutions not working to address the problem that these people are facing, right? So I know all these are just question marks which I put for you guys so then to craft your first deck in terms of the problem opportunity, right? So the other questions that you probably need to ask yourself when you are crafting this particular deck is that you also want to describe your industry, the trends, the size of the market, the growth potential of your venture, why now, why is it that it is the right time to do it. Some businesses are probably based on the right time and the right factors. I started a company way back in 2010 focusing on augmented reality. 2010. It was too soon, too early for the market. Even right now in 2024, augmented reality is still not as commercialized as we thought it will be at this time. So imagine in 2010 when I first started the AR company. Yeah. So even though I thought that the opportunity for the market was there, the market was not ready, right? So you probably need to also spend some time talking why is it the right time for you to introduce this particular solution to the problem that people are having, right? Last but not least, you probably need to also demonstrate that you know this market better than anyone, right? Especially for those people in the domain sector that you guys are in the academical sector, you probably know better in terms of the problems that PhD students are facing, right? So then with your background, you probably are more credible to talk about the business that you are in, right? So in terms of, so after you've addressed the problem that you're trying the problem that you're trying to solve, then people want to know what exactly is the solution, the product that you're offering in the market, right? This is probably either touch and go. Sometimes if you want to do a video presentation and you probably notice masa testing before the presentation, everything looks good, everything works during the presentation day. When you want to show a video, masa tu lah video tak boleh start, video and whatnot, right? So if you can, I think it'll be good to actually show a product demonstration. But if you're not confident that the technology would not work during the day itself, then maybe not. But I think people want to know what the solution is. So visuals, graphics is actually very helpful in terms of the investors and the crowd visualizing what your product is, right? So if you can demonstrate what the product is, if you can demonstrate how people are using your product, even testimonies of people after using your product is good in terms of validating your product, right? So if you intend to actually show video demonstration, then be confident that this video will work. The worst scenario is that it doesn't work and your 5 minutes is still ongoing and you probably won't be able to do or to share other information about your company. Yeah. So that's something that is a risk, but if you're confident of doing it, then do it, right? The other deck slide which investors are looking for or anticipating you guys to present is really to educate them the market that you guys are in. People want to know how big is this addressable market, what's the growth rate, and who are your customers, right? You need to clearly define your market and how you will reach your customer. And this is something which we'll talk about in your go-to-market strategy, right? And really demonstrate why your customers are willing to pay for your product, right? So the problem needs to be a big problem that people are happy to pay for your product, right? Why are people happy to pay, for example, Slack for their, what do you call? Oh man, what's the product for their software, right? For people to interact within the team, right? So right now for Slack, people pay about $5 per person on a monthly basis because people think that Slack addresses a huge problem in terms of how people communicate within the company, right? So you need to demonstrate within your own product product market, that people, customers and clients are happy to pay for your services and your product, right? Obviously, we need to know that the market is not static, it will grow. Hence, we want to know why this market will be relevant and this product will then morph into something different. I think every market that companies are in will always change as time goes by. So having a company that is positioned to not just address the market as it is currently, but also able to tell investors or people how the market will move in the next 3 to 5 years is also very advantageous, right? So having that thinking mode in terms of anticipating what the future market will be, in terms of how your customers will be using your product, is also very, very important when you talk about your market, right? Because in the end, investors know that most of the time market does not stand still. Market moves. Investing in a team that is able to actually anticipate how market is moving is also very, very important. Yeah. So being able to actually share a bit about how this market will move from today to the next year and the following year is also very, very important. Yeah. So that's market. Like I said, a lot of information, but my point is this: to take all this information which I shared so that you can then craft your market slide, right? You don't have to cover everything, but I think what you need to do is actually to take all this information and then craft it in one slide in terms of covering the questions which I pose for you to think about, right? Now, the next slide is competition. You'll be surprised that some companies can, when they present, there is no competition slide. And that gets a lot of investors thinking, right? First of all, if no one else is in this particular vertical, this particular industry, right? Why, right? Is it because there's not really a market that no one is interested to come in, right? When people say there is no competition, then it blows our mind as investors, right? Either seriously there's no competition, which means that probably there's no one interested to come into this particular industry, or worst scenario, the worst thing that could happen is that the founders did not do their homework and did not find the competitors in their market, right? So what could happen, the worst thing that could happen to you is that during Q&A, when people ask you about your competition and you say that you don't have, and one investor just use their mobile phone, do a Google search, and they find and they point to you an investor, and that's the time that you probably should just give up, because after that, I doubt very much anyone will want to talk to you, right? Because I think a lot of credibility goes down the drain if you fail to identify who your competition is, right? So you need to know who they are, primary, secondary. Not every competitor is a direct competitor. Some of them are secondary. So you need to also understand who they are and then compare between, and then do that comparison table between what you guys do and what they do, right? You also need to also be very honest in terms of what their strengths are. A lot of people only focus on their weaknesses and say that mine is the best in the world. Seriously, all right? But sometimes then we need to also give credence to what people are doing better, right? So being honest about their strength and also their weakness is important, right? Telling people or telling investors that your product is the best and your competitor's product, even though they're early in the market, is not as good as you, sometimes create a feeling that that you're either not honest about what the market is, and therefore you're trying too much and too hard to sell your company, right? So have a balance between what you do and what your competition does, right? Having said that, even though the competition is there and they have probably a large they're probably earlier from you. I think it's good for you to also then share with us investors in terms of how you are different, what's the specific advantage that you have over your competition, why would consumers use your product compared to theirs, right? And lastly, why are you going to win in terms of market adoption of the product that you're offering compared to your competition, right? If you look at the history of Google compared to Yahoo, compared to search engines in the world, right? The excites. If you're old enough, I think you're old enough like me, you know some of the search engine like Excite, Alta Vista, right? In the early days of internet, right? All of them died. Yahoo was the biggest search engine at that time, offered to buy Google for 1 million. And Google wanted them to purchase them for 1 million, and Yahoo didn't want to buy them. Now look at how it changed the landscape, right? So I think a lot of investors could not imagine Google overpowering Yahoo in the search engine business, right? But eventually, Google managed to show that they have a better product, and that product can do multiple things, create multiple revenue streams, which in the end got us as users to use them better than using Yahoo as a way for us to advertise our product using their search engine, right? So in the end, we want to know how are you going to win as compared to your competitors, right? Now, all this we all know is just projections, right? We don't know that for a fact, right? But it helps investors when founders are pitching, right? Or even presenting to potential investors of the mindset that you guys have when you guys talking about your company and how confident that you guys are in terms of competing with your competitors, right? So we want to know how you guys are thinking about your competition and how you guys differentiating and trying to win over your competition, right? But having said that, in the end, the proof is in the pudding. We don't know until you take our money and execute it. Until then, it's all about projections. It's all about planning, right? But if you can address all those questions, then the tip in terms of confidence will change, and that's when investors will probably put money into your company. Okay, so the next particular deck is we want to know how you make money. That's important, right? The days of companies like Instagram raising tons of money upon onboarding customers without even thinking how they will make money is long gone, right? We all missed the boat, right? Those days it's all about how many users we can actually onboard, right? So even though they never made any revenue or people don't pay for their services like WhatsApp, right? People don't pay for their services, yet Facebook bought them for 19 billion US dollars, right? So those days are long gone. People want to know what your revenue model from the start, from the word go, right? So from the beginning, especially when you're trying to raise money in Malaysia, people want to know revenue. People want to know how are you making money and when are you making money. If you're still not making money, they want to know when, right? So some people, some companies, when they present it, they would probably say that for the 6 months, I will give my services and product for free. Then later, I will then get them to pay for my services, right? Contohnya, kakitangan.com, right? So some of you guys are familiar with kakitangan.com, the CRM for HR services, right? So they offer their product for free in the beginning. So people can use their product, not all of the major product, but some of the freebies they use for free. But later, once they onboard them, then they start upselling some of the other features, and now people pay them X amount of money every month to use all the features offered by Kaki Tangan, right? So in the beginning, that was something that investors agreed for them to do so that they can capture the market and then upsell other important features that companies need in their HR punya process, right? So in that kind of companies, investors are happy to do it, right? Are happy to invest in them, even though they've not actually done any revenue yet, but yet they have a sizable amount of users in their database, right? But every company is different, right? Some companies you can generate money straight away, then you need to, because investors will be asking, why are you not generating revenue, right? So the longer you take to generate revenue, then the more worrying it will be for investors, because if you're not generating, because sometimes generating revenue is actually a test whether people will actually use your product or not, right? Because if you're not doing it, then they will probably be happily doing it for free, and hence the ability for you to start asking them to pay will be lost, right? They also want to know your monthly burn rate. Hence, they want to know what potentially at the end of the month, whether will you know either be in the negative or positive in terms of your P&L, right? So having those information will be very, very important when you talk about your business and revenue model, right? The go-to-market strategy is really about scaling and growth. Every company that wants to raise funding normally is about the reason is about growing to the next level, right? So you are at right now at X, you want to get to Y and Z. And the fundraising that you need to do is really about how do I scale this business to the next level. And hence the go-to-market strategy will be the most looked at deck among all the other decks apart from valuation, right? So the go-to-market strategy is really for the investors to assess whether you have the right strategy in terms of getting more people to use your product, right? So if right now your strategy is word of mouth, which is very organic, then if you want to scale this double, triple, then we probably need a technology play, right? So technology play is what? You use social media, you use ads. How do you do it, right? And how do you ensure that when you spend X amount of money in social ads, that you actually capture the right demographic of people that is willing to use your product? And that's really sometimes quite tricky compared to say face-to-face word of mouth, where you can actually identify the people itself in terms of the actual numbers, as compared to say buying ads and not knowing who actually will actually open your ads for them to look at your company, right? So going to the go-to-market strategy is really very, very important in terms of elaborating your market strategy. They want to know also the cost of your go-to-market strategy, and why would your customers use your product over other people, right? Now, in relation to that, investors also want to know your moat, right? A moat is really this place where this unfair advantage that you have over other people, right? So sometimes this unfair advantage could be by way of the product itself. It could be way by cost, because you could offer them probably a much more cheaper price but a better solution compared to your competitors, right? So you need to know that what is it your moat, what is it your specific advantage that you have over your competition that will drive people to use you and not move to other product, right? So you need to understand your product, and then from your product, you need to understand what your moat is, right? So the next slide that people or investors want to know is traction. So there is nothing better than showing investors that you have traction. You're growing multiple week by week, month by month, year by year, right? Because numbers in terms of revenue does not sorry, numbers in terms of revenue week to week, month to month is not it's not fake, right? It tells investors a story that you are growing, right? So if you're a company that already has traction in terms of revenue and you are growing, that itself is the best evidence in terms of why investors like myself should be investing in your company so that you can then grow much more faster. Because again, like I mentioned, investment is really fuel to your growth, right? So if you're already showing traction and you already have the right strategy, then my money or other people's money will be able to drive that traction or that momentum faster than it is, right? So how do you show it? I think using graphical visuals is very, very important, right? So show the best, so use the best template in terms of a graphic visuals. There are so many examples out there in the market to really quantify or visualize that actual traction that you have. So it could either by terms of revenue, sales, or even by users, right? Even if you're not really generating revenue yet, you can also show that kaki tangan, when they raise funding on Pitchin, they were able to show that in terms of onboarding users to their product, they were growing very fast every week and every month, right? And that itself excited investors because they know that once they onboard all these users into their database, it will then be easy for them to upsell whatever other features they have in kakitangan.com, right? So again, look at all this, understand all those questions, and then try to then visualize it in your traction slide. So once you do that, we obviously, or rather the investors obviously want to know what will be the forecast or projection of your company post the fundraising, right? So with this money that you are fundraising, we want to know what will happen to your company. Again, this particular slide goes hand in hand with your go-to-market strategy, right? And also the next slide, which I will then share in terms of the ask and how you want to utilize your funding. Because your financial projection and your growth projection will go in hand with your go-to-market strategy and how you spend your money in the different sectors of the your different sectors of your strategy to grow your company, right? So typically you will then have your graph where you will then project that after your fundraising, the first year how you will grow, the second year how you will grow, and so forth, right? But at the same time, I think investors also appreciate that while you have all this great positive story about projection, but we all know that not everything will happen as what we project. There will be challenges. We also want to know what potentially are the challenges that you feel you will face despite the projections that you have and despite all the go-to-market strategy that you may have, right? And again, for me, that does not negate the projection. In fact, that addresses a real factor in every company's journey. There will be challenges, right? Even pitching when we presented, right? Our projections are all positive, but we know there will be hiccups, there will be challenges. So we also address what the potential challenges are and how we potentially want to address those challenges, right? So if you're saying me that with the projection that you have, you will meet all those projections, then I think all of us are living in a fantasy land, right? Because I've not seen any companies meet all their projection. Even the best one, you look at Grab, right? Even they miss projection. because you cannot control what will happen in the future. What we should do as founders is to identify those challenges and then address it by sharing what potentially we would do to address those challenges. Having said that, we all know that even addressing it may not be able to solve that challenge that we may face in the future. But it's good for investors to know and appreciate that you guys are thinking about it, right? So the last few slides is all about the money that you want to raise. So the next slide will be the ask. We want to know how much you are looking for, how much you're offering equity to investors. So once you identify the amount of money, say $1 million, and how much equity you want to offer, which is 10%, then we know the valuation of your company post fundraising is 10 million. And the pre-valuation of your company is 9 million, right? And that's where, as investors, I start calculating based on your traction, based on your current revenue, whether the valuation that you're asking for is justifiable or not, right? So at the 9 million ringgit current valuation, I want to see whether the numbers that you are pushing is actually justifying the valuation that you're asking, which is 9 million pre-money, but 10 million post the fundraising, right? So that's where sometimes the valuation, as I mentioned early on, that's where sometimes the valuation that I see as investor sometimes does not meet in terms of the valuation that the company actually is asking for. In most of the times, when companies want to raise funding, and this is my observation too, they're not really focused on the valuation. They just feel that for the next round, for me to grow to the next level, I need 1 million. But I do not want to give a lot of equity because I can see that after this fundraising, I want to raise more money. Hence, I do not want to give more equity away. So that's why they feel that, okay, let's start with 10%. But that, in a valuation method, now gives you a valuation of 10 million, even though maybe you're not justified yet for that 10 million, right? And that's where I feel that sometimes when that scenario happens, that's where talking to people like a crowdfunding platform like Pitchin will be able to then give you some feedback and advice in terms of the amount of money, the amount of money that you should be looking for to try to get where you are, and therefore you don't have to give too much equity away or too little equity away, but then enough so that investors feel that the valuation is justifiable, right? So this particular slides can sometimes be tricky, especially when you're an early stage company, you want to move to the next level, and you feel you want to give away, you want to raise, say, 1 million, but then you don't want to give away a lot of equity, say 10%, but then eventually you're telling people that your valuation currently is 10 million, right? And that's when, after Q&A, people start attacking you on your valuation, right? So if you have time, I know there is a week to go. If you can spend at least a few hours with some of your mentors, get them, test them with your thinking, right? So for example, for your company, maybe for the next level, you need 500,000, right? So if I were to give 10% away, that's 10 million ringgit valuation based on your current revenue. Would that be fair in terms of the valuation, right? But sometimes you can also oversell your valuation by justifying them what the future will be. So even at the pre-money valuation of 9 million, even though people think it's rich or expensive, but if you can sell them that with your 1 million ringgit, which you will put in, I will be able to do X, Y, Z and grow ABC, yeah, which is triple or even quadruple the current revenue that I have, then the 10 million ringgit valuation that you are asking potentially could be justified. But then it depends on whether I want to believe in your story that you will be able to grow this company to the next level. Some people argue that when kakitangan.com raised funding on pitching, they were still money. They were still losing money at that time, but they managed to raise on a 10 million ringgit valuation. Some people thought it was expensive, right? But 63 people decided that it was fair, and they believe the business can grow after they raised the 1.5 million, which they did. So post fundraising, 1 year after that, they managed to raise a further round from BFM Capital, the radio station. They had their own venture arm on a higher valuation, which means that BFM Capital agreed that the valuation at that time, 10 million, was justified, and further on, they agreed they deserve a much more valuation, much more higher valuation when BFM Capital came in, which tells me kakitangan.com managed to hit their numbers post fundraising. And that's really sometimes the challenge when companies try to raise funding on a higher valuation. If you fail to reach your numbers, what you are targeting for your KP, for your next round, then potentially for your next round, you'll be lucky to raise funding, but at a lower valuation, which means all your previous investors will be diluted, including you, which is not good news, but at least your company still has a chance to survive. The other scenario is that no one is interested and the company tutup and close down. So that's why valuation is very, very important, right? So the ask is going to be very, very important on the day, because once you quote a number, an amount, an equity play, people will start already putting a valuation on your company. And during Q&A, one of the most popular questions is, how did you arrive on that valuation? How do you justify it? Yeah, so 1 week is a short time, but use that 1 week to harass your mentors to help you, right? Your mentors get paid, right? Okay, so they get paid, so harass them, right? Yeah. So again, this is the follow-up from the ask. Once you have that graphic, then usually, I think you guys have seen, there will be a pie chart in terms of berapa percent of the money that you want to raise goes to XYZ, right? So here you got, so here in your slide, you will then show them that particular graphic in terms of how you will spend your money. And when you spend money, say on resource, on software, on marketing, how each of this spending will grow your company, right? So people want to know, if you're spending money on human resource, how these people that you'll be taking in will grow the company, right? If you're spending on software, how? If you're spending on marketing, how, right? So this is so this particular slide is all about addressing the questions that investors will have in terms of how the money that they will give to you will help you to grow your company to the next level, right? All right. So the last slide, which is the 30th slide, and again, it could either be the beginning slide or the end. It's up to you, your style. But if you use this at the beginning, right, then you need to spend more time talking about individually what the people in your company will do. Because people want to know what ABC do, because later when you share about your company, then they can figure out what A is doing. When you talk about B, they will then have a mental note in terms of, okay, B is doing X, Y, Z, right? And that's why I believe, and that's why I think most of people, they like to use this slide at the last deck before they finish their presentation, right? So when you use your team company slide, it'll be good to have their faces, their title, and a summary in terms of what they do. I think that you don't have to budget individually what they do. I think when people are presenting, people who are watching and listening, they can already read. But I think it's useful for you then to talk openly about what each of them, each of these team members do and how they contribute to your company, right? So that it will build confidence to your investors. Thanks. To your investors that they know they have the right people that is focused on that each strategy line that you have for your company, right? So in the end, what you want to what you want to be able to actually drive is the key points that make your company more bankable than others, right? Because again, you are not the only company fundraising. You got 10 people pitching at the same time. Again, I have only limited amount of money. I can probably invest maybe 2 out of 10. So what makes you, even though you're a different company, right? And different verticals and industry, right? But then what makes you more bankable than the other company, right? So that's something that you have to try to address when you present this slide about your company, right? So like I said, line up the pictures of your team members, brief info about each of them, their background, prior experiences, accomplishments, where they studied. You don't have to shout it out. It's there already, right? But when you're on that particular slide, that is really talking about openly about, I have a great team. My team have multiple experiences that is able to address whatever challenges that we face, and they have already the experience and know-how to actually execute whatever plans we have, right? So talk about that, but leave the photographs, the background information out there for people to read. So while you're explaining about how great team you have, people can see that based on the brief information that you're sharing about, individually about them in the background, right? I've seen some founders presenting when they spell out every single line what the team member has in terms of kelayakan and also the experience. It just wastes time. People can read it, right? So while they're listening to you, they're already looking at the pictures and the experience that each of your team member have, right? So that will get across the message in terms of why we as investors should be betting on you rather than other companies, right? So when I did this presentation to CDEC, right? So CDEC pun macam you guys have a 5-minute rule, right? So when they saw the 13 slide, kan kata, how do I fit this in 5 minutes, right? So they didn't ask me, right? Out of the 13 ni, mana satu which I would have to focus on, right? So out of this 13, right? Obviously, you need to look at. Let's go back to the beginning, right? So out of the 13, right? So out of the 13, right, there are some slides that you can actually combine, right? So for example, the intro and the problem statement and the solution and the product can be actually one slide. You know? If you're smart about it, you can actually put it into one slide, right? And that's why sometimes you're going to practice it very, often and well, right? But you can actually put 1, 2, and 3 together. The market size and the competition can be both. The business revenue model, go-to-market, and your mode can be together. Your traction and your financial projections can be together. So your traction is the present, your financial and growth projection is the future. So you can do one slide currently and what is my projection in the next 3 to 5 years. So one slide, you can cover 2 of this information, right? Whereas the ask and use of funds can be one slide, right? Then leaving the team company on their own, right? So you don't really have to have 13 slides. So these 13 slides can actually be compressed into 5 or 6 slides. So if you combine 1, 2, 3, you got one slide. Market size and competition and business revenue, you got the second slide. Go to market, your mode, your next slide, you have 3. Traction and financial projection, you got 4. Ask and use of fund, you got 5. And then team company got 6. So these 13 slides can be compressed into 6 or 7 slides. Yeah, but depending on your style, right? I know 5 minutes is a short of time to cover everything, but you need to be smart in terms of identifying what you think would be the sexier point about your company to get them interested in terms of your next meeting and whatnot, right? Which I spoke about just now. Right. So the other thing which will be very, very useful for you is actually to have an appendix. This is not something that every company does, but some company do, and some of them do it because they're well prepared. They will have this appendix prepared because during Q&A, investors will ask for a lot of things. Sometimes they want to know about your P&L, so they will actually share some of the P&L which they have. So have all that prepared if you can, if you have enough time. But this is more work for you to prepare all this. Yeah. But I think if companies or founders prepare this, some of it is just brownie points. It doesn't mean that if you don't prepare this, people will think that you're not ready. It's just that if you have all this prepared, right, for investors then it's brownie points for you, right? Then you come across as someone that's very, 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 very prepared, right? But doesn't mean that you have to. Good to have, but if you don't have it, that's okay, right? But if you have it, then prepare all these things so that when people ask you questions, it's easy for you to just go to the slide and show them on a slide that you have all this prepared for them, right? So after this, we can do a Q&A, and then before we go into the next presentation in terms of managing investors' expectation in terms of what they want to hear from you, right? But I just want to leave this particular session on these 3 things now, right? I think in the end, right, founders need to focus on the big picture, which is your business, right? During your presentation slide, I think there is always a tendency to overshare. Sometimes when you have a limited time of period, oversharing can sometimes be your enemy, right? Because sometimes I think less is more, especially when you focus on the important part that is enough to get people wanting to know more. Because like I said early on, the whole advantage of the demo day or pitching session, right, is not to finalize an investment there and then. I think why people overshare because they're afraid that if I don't share everything, then how can these people decide to invest in my company, right? But I think investors know that you can't share all of that within 5 minutes. And that's why you need to pick and choose the most important thing that is the strength of your company during that 5 minutes so that I am interested to have that second, third, fourth meeting with you, right? So focus on one thing at a time. Focus on the most important thing, right? So highlight your strength, highlight your unique selling proposition, why you are so different from others, because like I said, there are so many other people out there either doing the same thing or competing against you. What's so different that you guys are apart from them, right? And also when you're doing your demo days presentation, right? You need to show what is relevant. So for example, right? It's all about experience. It's all about visual. It's all about graphic, right? That's why I would try to avoid having a deck filled with text, right? Because when people start reading, right, they're not listening to you, right? But if it's more visual, more graphic, graphics sort of like invite you to look, but at the same time they listen to you. And when you listening, the graphic is actually helping them in terms of visualizing what you're trying to present. But if you're doing a full text, then people are just reading off your presentation deck and not really listening to you, right? So if you're a technology company and you need to do a demo, then like I said, potentially doing a demo is important for them to really visualize what your company is doing. But like I said, you run the risk of the demo failing because of technology, right? So have a balance, right? In the end, decide whether you want to do that demo or not, right? So that in a nutshell is the 13 slides covering 13 very important topic that every investor is looking for. Having said that, like I said again, you can combine some of them into one deck, right? Covering 2 or 3 different topics because these topics are interrelated to each other. Because of 5 minutes, I would advise you to do at least 5 to 7 slides. Your job is to try to get all these 13 into those 5 to 7 slides. Yeah. So make full use of your mentors. They are paid, harass them so that they get them. You get your money's worth because Beyond 4 is paying them, right? Okay. I'm sure the mentors are hating me right now, right? So the next, okay, so before we go to the next topic, where I talk about what investors are expecting, is there any questions that you may have about the slides?
So much say that's the investors of what we are looking our idea.
Okay, cool. You know, I can as an investor I love so I think an honesty is the best way, right? Some companies can sometimes I feel right they paint a picture where it's too too rosy, right? Because we all know life is not like that. Similar as to setting up a company or building a company. There will be challenges, right? So we want to know that early on. We want to know that founders early on already identify those challenges, right? So your question is, at which point should I share that, right? So let's just look at the 13 slides. So I feel right that when we want to talk about challenges that founders face and companies face, the best way to do it is when we are talking about when we're just talking about the projections that you have, right? So I think the first few slides is really talking about what currently you guys are doing and achieving. So that's the current phase. And now what's the future, right? But the future is something that all of us don't know, right? Even right now, we know what the challenges are, and that challenge can multiple, can quadruple once we want to grow, right? So the challenge that I have running Pitchin 2-3 years ago is different from what I have right now, right? So if you want to talk about the challenge, the future challenges or the challenge that you face in running your company, you should share it once you're talking about your growth projection plan. That's when you want to sit your investors down and tell them that despite all this projection, this is what I potentially see the challenges that I will face. But tak boleh hanya stop at that, right? But then investors also want to know what are you thinking in terms of those challenges and how you think you can address those challenges. Now, when I say that, I don't really expect that whatever you say in terms of addressing those challenges is the answer to those challenges, because we don't know, right? Because until you face it, until you receive my money and start spending it, we don't know whether your strategy in terms of addressing these challenges will actually work or not. But I would like to know you are already thinking about it and already having plans in terms of how to address it. So to your question, yes, identifying these challenges is important, but equally important is also identifying solutions to the challenges. Yes, yeah. So that's why the ask is like so many things happening, right? So you're asking for money to grow your company to XYZ, but at the same time, you also know that in trying to drive this company to XYZ, you potentially will face challenges in the form of ABC, right? And that's where you then share with the investors how you want to address those challenges. So yeah, just that one slide, you will talk so many things. In fact, that one slide will talk about what do you call the projection slide, the ask slide, and the use of fund slide, right? So that's why you don't need to have 13 slides. In a 5-minute deck, you probably need 6 and 7, where you combine some of them into one slide. Yeah, but the team of company, I would really encourage you to have just one dedicated slide for that. Because for me, in the end, that's really what sells the company, the team behind the company. Yeah. Any other questions?
To have a clear financial projection where you cost is
Okay. Okay, so you can actually right combine the business revenue model, right, together with your what they call your financial and growth plan, right? So you could actually have one slide, just that, where you talk about your current revenue, yeah, where you talk people about how your company is growing, but then at the same deck, but on a different graphic, you can then show to them how you project your company will grow in the next 3 to 5 years after you raise your funding. Yeah. So some companies do that. Some companies just have a dedicated deck slide on just the current revenue, right? And the projection is on a different slide, right? But again, like I said, time is the essence. If you're confident that you can actually cover all that within that 5 minutes, then have separate slides. If you're not confident, then you can have both graphic talking about the current revenue and your projections, right? Then it's easy for you to explain to the investors where you are right now and what you perceive you will be after you raise your funding. Yeah. So some companies, right? Some founders, right? They do one dedicated current revenue. Then in terms of the projection, they do 2 graphic. One, if I don't raise funding, so I'm still confident that I will grow, but I will grow slowly, right? But with funding, this is how I can grow, right? Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that will help investors or even founders can to really attract investors to invest, because you will then be able to tell people that I could still be sustainable, I could still sustain my businesses without funding, but with your money, I could grow it 3 times, 5 times, right? With the strategy that I have in terms of go to market, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yep. 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 Mm. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so I know some companies, right? Right now at the stage, they feel that probably grant, the way of grant is probably the way to go, right? So you may not have the ask in terms of money. Your ask is in terms of partnership, connection, right? So your ask is that among you, the crowd, yeah. So I'm looking for partnership in terms of XYZ. Yeah, you can do that too. So rather than ask for money, you ask for network, partnership, and whatnot, right? But at the same time, if I were you, right, I would still ask for money, but you don't have to spell out the equity. right? So you could potentially say that I need because you're still an ID stage company, right? So very early, right? So I think if for an early company, right, when you're asking for ask from investors, right, just to validate your product, right, or your services, right, it's very important sometimes not to over ask. So what I mean by this is this: if you imagine the lorry, the lorry money match, La Pasa and whatnot, they started their companies with just 50,000 ringgit and 8% that we invested in, right? So when an ID stage companies, and I've seen it and experienced it, when they come on board and say that I need 1 million ringgit, straight away I can tell you 2/3 of the room you dah lost, right? Because the danger then of sometimes asking for a lot more money, especially when you're early stage, is that sometimes we as founders tend to spend on things which may not be really helpful to the growth of our company. So that's why when we talk about the asking punya slide, right, we need to be very precise, and that's why founders will actually do their own calculation in terms of what they project. So if I project my growth to be XYZ and I need, say, 2-3 orang more people, and I pay them maybe 5,000 ringgit per month, kali 12, kali 3 tahun, because I need 3 years, and these people will then be able to generate XYZ, and this is the amount I need. So I need maybe only 500,000, or maybe 250K, or maybe 200K, right? But some founders can say from the word go, I need 1 million, right? But the danger to that is that when you have a lot of money, you tend to spend money pada benda-benda yang tak menolong company to grow, right? And you have so many examples to that, right? And also and I know some government agencies do not like me to say this, some government agencies give too much grant money juga, especially on an early stage company. Yeah, there is a particular grant that gives a lot of money to companies with just an idea, right? One agency gave 500,000 to an idea stage company, right? And when I told the agency that I can build 10 companies from that 500,000 that you give to one company, and I bagi contoh the lorry and whatnot, I still remember the CEO cakap, kelentong lah, right? So they thought I was lying, right? But I feel when you have just enough money, right, founders tend to be very disciplined in terms of how they spend their money, right? And that's my own experience now, right? So even if you're an idea stage company, there's nothing wrong for you apart from asking just partnership and network, right? But you could actually put an amount, say 200K, and in terms of the equity, right, you can just put there to be discussed, right? Or some of you could say that we prefer to do a safe note, for example, right? Remember safe note, where we suspend the valuation until the next round. Because early stage payah nak calculate the valuation, right? Because we don't know, right? So rather than try to put a valuation, we postpone or pause the valuation until a certain period when you guys have grown bigger. Then we raise another round, and that's where we put the valuation. Yeah. But to your answer, if you do not want to put any money because you want to focus on grant, right? Then just put there, I'm asking or looking for partnership, networking, and so forth. That's also fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Next one.
Yeah.
The multiplication number. The next number for
And-
investment.
Okay, the next number is they want to see after the fundraising double. This double, yeah, within a year. Yeah, within a year or two. No? Yeah. So that's why the strategy will have to be like really good, right? And again, to answer her question, not every strategy on paper will also do well, but you'll also be able to then share what potentially could happen wrongly, and what you could do to address that, right? Most of the time, these things will happen during your second, third meeting. The first presentation is just for people to to know that you guys are thinking about it. The details of it will normally happen during the second, third, fourth meeting when the investor really wants to invest, right? In the end, investment is all about taking chances. It's a risk, right? Because there's no guarantee, right? Even big companies fail. Companies who have raised hundreds of million ringgit still fail and die. Kan, apa lagi our kind of companies, right? But once we are comforted by the fact that the founders are very in tune with what they do and what they want to do and what are the challenges, then at least as an investor, I rasa okay lah, sedap lah hati sikit. Dan diorang ni faham, right? Kalau diorang tak faham, then macam mana I nak invest, right? Because I'm not going to run the company, right? So yeah, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're really.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
You want to share the outlook and
Yeah. So valuation, especially for early stage companies, will be very tricky, right? Because you've not gotten that maturity yet, right? And that's why companies go to grants, right? For early money. Sometimes companies go to programs macam WTF, where we give 50K or 8%, which gives you a valuation of 6 to 5K. But that I think is fair because companies masa tu tak ada money pun. Just PowerPoint deck saja. Right, so just 12 helai power kertas, I value you at 6 to 5K. Okay lah tu kan? Kan? But when you have some revenue, right? Contohnya you're making what? 12K per month, right? So there is revenue, and then annually you had 120K. So that's already revenue. So if I offer you 50K for 8%, some founders like you may say that that's too cheap because I already have revenue. And that 1 to OK is already my revenue, which in the market, if I were to compare that to my competitors yang dah besar-besar, right? Maybe the revenue, the multiple revenue of that particular business in your sector, maybe it's 5 times, right? So maybe in 5 times it's a more matured company, but because you're so early, then we give a discount. So your multiple maybe is 3 contohnya. Yeah. So typically when we look at you and we will look at your other competitors in the market, see what the revenue is, and then we see how they got that particular valuation. So maybe for that particular industry, right, the multiple revenue for them to achieve that particular valuation is maybe 10 or 20 or 30, right? But for you, because you're still very new, we cannot give you a multiple of 30, right? So maybe because of you are new, you have to give us the investor a discount. So because you are still very new, then the multiple is 5, right? So now we value at 120 kali 5, so 600,000. That's your value. That's your worth of your company. So based on that, right, then we have to go back and then look at the amount of money you want to raise and how much equity you want to give away to meet that 600,000 valuation. In the end, it may not even work, right? But if that doesn't work, then we look at projection. What potentially would the company be in the next 3 to 5 years, right? So that's why for kakitangan.com, if I can share, when they raised funding previously on pitching, right, a lot of people thought that they are not a 10 million ringgit company. They thought that they were paling banyak pun 5 million. So a lot of people were thinking that they were overpriced by 2 times, right? But FN and Kakitangan was not pricing them at that moment, right? They are pricing them for the future before they raise the next round. So which means when Efren raised 1.5 million, he recognized and he realized that for the next 1 year, 12 months to 18 months, I've got to work so hard and meet all the numbers which I promised my investors. So that by the time I raise my next round, people would not hit me again on my numbers in terms of my valuation. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Or get LVP.
Yep. Yep. If we offer game, how much? Yeah. Yeah. So that's why kan, maybe for you kan, the 50K for 8% punya scenario macam what we do for the Watchtower and Friends is suitable. Because you don't need a lot of money. You need 50K to just get your MVP done. And that's what other people, companies like the Lorry needed. And we only take 8%, right? So I can't speak for every investor, right? Again, like I said, not every people out there are angel investors. Some of them perceived to be angel, tetapi mereka adalah devil in disguise, right? Yeah. So that's why pick your angel, right? So if someone comes to you and say that I want to give you 100,000 ringgit, but I want 40% of your company, run away, right? Run away, right? An angel always can think about the future of not them, but you, right? They're there to help you, give you your first amount of money to get your first validation or whatnot. And then so that you can then get your numbers so that you can raise more money, right? So in your situation, right, I think it will be tough even for you to get a valuation of say 1 million or even 1.5 million, right? Because they feel that it's still very early, right? So if you yourself as a founder can and realize that and feel that you need to take baby steps. At the same time, you need money, but at the same time, you don't want to give a lot more equity away. And you feel with 50K, I can get my first MVP up and running. Then someone like you will be very attractive to angel investors and also accelerator companies. Yeah, because accelerator companies also do not put in a lot of money, but they also don't want to take a lot of equity. Right? But if you want to raise, contohnya 1 million, right? Then it's difficult for me to come in because you're offering only 10%. So even if I put in the 100,000 ringgit, right? Then I only get 1%. Yeah. Yep. Yes. Yeah, so those all of that are assets, right? So even IP can be used in terms of your valuation, right? Yes, the short answer to that is yes, right? But that's why I always advise people or founders like yourself, right, to talk to someone, a valuer. Again, these valuers can be very expensive. People macam from Crew, ENY, whatnot, when they charge you to do a valuation work, they really charge you an arm and a leg, right? 50,000 ringgit is the opening, right? It can go up to even hundreds of thousands, right? But there are also other valuers who are more startup friendly. Macam at Pitchin, we use this kind of valuers. They're equally good, yeah. In fact, for the kind of companies like yourself, they will probably be the best people to actually work with you. And typically for them, of course, you have to pay them juga. Typically, they charge between 4 to 10K, right? But they will get you the help that you need in terms of valuing your company. But the short answer to your question, Teddy, is that yes, you can also add them as part of your valuation. Yeah, especially IP. Okay, any other questions? Kalau tak ada, we can go to the next one, which is anticipating investor questions, right? Okay. Ini bukan mic kan? Patut lah. Jangan. Orang mic. Okay, so anticipating investor questions is very important lah. Especially after a presentation during demo day. They have what? 7 minutes? 10 minutes, yeah. Which is not good for you because a lot of time, right? Kalau dia short, then maybe tak banyak soalan. Kalau 10, then maybe banyak soalan, right? Also, there's sometimes there's also a feeling that after I present 10 minit Q&A, siapa pun tanya. And then you ask yourself, orang faham ke? Orang tak faham ke? Am I doing a great job that I can tap myself ke? Kan? So that feeling can also be quite tricky, right? Because if people tak tanya, then you worry because adakah people tak interested ke, kan? And whatnot. My style as an investor is that sometimes I don't ask questions just for the sake of asking, right? I feel it's a waste of time, right? So it doesn't mean that I'm not interested. It's just that I feel that it's all there. Other things I can later follow up with you, right? So why I say this is that there will be occasion where when you present and nobody asks, don't feel bad, yeah? Because probably investors feel that they have enough information for them to approach you later on, right? Some investor or some judges, with all due respect, I hope some of your mentors are not in this room, right? Some of them then love to hear themselves, right? So they tend to ask questions walaupun benda tu dah ada, right? So there are some people like that lah. But sometimes it's because the information is not there when you present. And that's when people ask you. Contohnya macam valuation, if they feel the valuation is fair, they don't ask question. If they feel the valuation is too off, then they ask, right? Sometimes they feel that your competition slide is way off, or they feel that there is someone else doing this much more better than you, right? Why are they not there in your slide? Yeah. So before I start this, I just want to address that, right? Because I feel that commonly people feel that the more questions they ask, sometimes it equates to the more interested they are. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the more questions they ask is because they feel that the founders are not doing a great job, right? And that's why they need to ask more questions. For me, when I don't ask questions so much, that tells me that if I was in the audience, and if I don't ask questions, you should be happy. Because then you feel, I'm telling you right now that you've covered whatever that is needed from a founder, right? So I already have the information. Then the next thing is just to approach you later on and to have that discussion. Yeah, all right, cool. All right, so typically, these are the things which investors will gauge now. Every investment opportunity, when you're presenting, they will look at all these factors, right? So again, these factors, either we have touched base on this a few times on different sessions. The first thing founders. I remember this joke by Tan Sri Wahid. So currently the Bursa punya chairman, right? Formerly PUNB, Maybank chairman, right? So I had this chat with him lah. So I wanted to ask him. So Tan Sri kata, no, what do you look in companies before you invest, right? So he told me that, you know what, Sam, unless that company becomes, say, a Maybank, where you put a monkey as a CEO, and Maybank will still jalan, right? So until that company had reached that level, it's still about the people in this room, right? So that's why the founders and the founding team is still very, very important, right? I think a lot of people invest in pitching because of the founders, Cash and myself, right? Until you reach a certain level where, like what Tan Choo mentioned, like a Maybank, people will still look at founders as the main reason why they invest in the companies which they do, right? Now, the others are really supporting, but equally important. They look at your traction, your unit economics, your product market fit, and that's why during the presentation, you need to demonstrate all that or show examples of that. They need to look at your market where you are. Is your market big enough to scale from where you are until 3 times, 5 times, right? Can you grow that amount of times, right? If you can't, it's not so much because I'm not interested in you. I may feel that you're a great founder, you get a great team, but the market is too small and you can only grow to a certain level, which means if the investor, is looking for 5 times exit, 10 times exit, I can't see it, right? And that's where you can potentially, in a smaller market, you probably see angel investors coming in and not the big VCs and not the PEs, right? But then again, like I said earlier, nothing wrong with that, because then your success is different compared to the big boys, right? Because the big boys, to get to that level, the amount of headache, the amount of jumping, amount of maneuvering is more complicated compared to maybe a company that just focus on a smaller market, where they don't need to raise multiple rounds, right? But the exit may not be as big as the bigger boys, but the headache to getting there is less than the big boys, right? Imagine the headache of Anthony Tan of Grab, right? Trying to grow this company. When they listed, they lost 80% of whatever price which they went on Nasdaq, right? So every investor that put money before they were listed, they lost how many percent? Quite large of percentage, because the public, as in the Nasdaq market, did not agree that the valuation that they were asking for when they listed was at that level, and that's why the share price went further down by 80%. Of course, now it has grown, right? But you can imagine the level of pening kepala or trying to get back to the level where they were, right? So again, different businesses, different challenges, different headache, right? So tepuk dada, Chinese later, right? So the other thing which I think investors look at, we spoke about this just now very much, is about valuation. When you're pitching, when you're asking money, automatically investors are already calculating how much you are valued and how big you can be, right? If you're valued too big early on, I cannot see the way that I can exit, right? And I cannot see the ROI which I can actually potentially get in terms of investing in your company. So these are the 5 main things, right, which every investor, when they speak to you, either casually and whatnot, I will promise you, while they are talking to you and trying to understand your business, at the same time, they're already making all this decision in their head, whether they want to invest you or not, to invest on you or not, right? our job as founders is to prove them wrong if they do not want to invest in you. Because if they don't invest in you, then there are other people that potentially could invest in you, right? So these are the things which I think every investor in their own mind, when they decide to invest without telling you, they're already, like I said, making assumptions about you, right? So already they are grading you as a person, right? Don't take it personally, right? Because some people, I think some people have different perception upon how they react upon talking to someone, right? Some people react positively, some people react negatively. And sometimes as founders, you cannot help that, right? And that's why sometimes the first few people are probably not the right investors for you, right? And then you have to work harder, talk to more people to get the right person, right? But essentially, when people talk to you, right, they're looking at these things which they try to get from you, whether your attitude, you are willing to learn, you are coachable, your track record, are you prompt and consistent in your replies whenever they ask you questions? Do they perceive you as trustworthy? And also, largely, they also want to look at your reputation among your community, right? So not everyone is known within your startup community because it's quite a big community. But example, in your community, I have to use her, but in your community within the academics, right? So how is she perceived, right? Within the community. Of course, I will do my homework in terms of touching base with other people within that community and asking, hey, what do you think about her? What do you think about what she's doing, right? But in the end, right, we want to know the founder punya personality, right? So when you talk about the traction and unit economics, these are the things that we will look at when we decide whether we want to invest in your company. Do we see consistent growth, right? Even if you don't have consistent growth, right, we will probably ask you why, and you can give us very good reasons why this particular month or this particular quarter the growth tak menjadi. If you have good reasons, then yeah, we're willing to listen to that, right? But we want to see this traction moving upwards, right? Once we see that, I think it's proof that this company is a potentially good company to grow even faster and larger when I invest in the company. So when we talk about scalability in terms of market size and potential, these are the things which we look at. We look at the addressable market. Again, like I said, what is the total addressable market, the serviceable addressable market, and also the obtainable market. These are three things. One is big, but we know that you can't reach everyone, right? But what is it that you can objectively attain, right? And from there, how you can then grow to the next level to grow your market. But if this particular market is too small, like I said, right? If this market is probably maybe a 10 million ringgit market, there's no way anyone would invest in your company, right? But if you're looking at a billion ringgit market, right? A 10 billion ringgit market, then that's a market where we feel that our investment could potentially return the investment that we need to, that we could potentially have. Yeah. So when we talk to you, right, when investors talk to you in terms of the exit potential, already they are making some calculative plans in terms of what potentially would be your exit potential, right? So for example, if I were investing in her startup, right, that is focused on the education tech side of it, right? Which potentially could also dive into outside of the education scenario, could I see someone like um, ENY acquiring them? Someone maybe a big what it called educational company that is largely focused on education, say for example Monash, right? Acquiring them. Then if I could see that, and I could see how they could grow this particular market so that they can get these people to be interested to acquire them, then I can safely say that within the next 3 to 5 years, with the right execution, then I could see an acquisition happening, right? So then I will probably be happy to invest in them, right? But if I can't see any way for these companies to exit, right? Whether so a lot of people say that we can exit for IPO, right? But we know that this IPO is not you see every day, right? In fact, even if you look at the local ecosystem with all the startups, right? You hardly see any startups going for IPO, right? The ones that we see, for example, Grab, they went on Nasdaq, also an IPO, which is fine, but it's very few, right? All the other startups that we see right now either exit through a merger and acquisition, or a follow-up investor comes in and invests more money and takes out all the early investor. That is probably what could happen to your company, either through a buyout from by incoming new investors, or through a merger and acquisition, right? So when we look at your companies, we are already imagining what are those potential exits can be, right? So my task or my job once we come in is really to prepare you for that journey, so that you will be attractive to the follow-up investors before we actually get a bigger whale to take you on, right? Now, at the same time, right, while we're imagining the potential exit that we can help you get, right, we also want to know what's your plan, right? It doesn't mean that whatever plans you have is cast in stone, but we also want to learn from you as founders. What is it that you see is the future for your company in terms of an exit plan? But if you don't see one, then obviously for investors like us, then we'll be worried, because how do I get back my capital and gain from this investment, right? But if you can clearly say that even if I don't make it to IPO, we think that our growth will be big enough for you to exit through either a buyback from the founders themselves, or through what we call buyout from incoming investors. So for example, when I talk about MyCash Online, the exit for all the investors was a buyout from the incoming investor. So remember when I said 500 startup invested in them, they took away all the ECF investors. So these investors made, I think, what, 3x. In fact, there is a few companies on Pitchin where they are now fundraising from another VC, and this VC is prepared to actually buy out all the investors and give them 3x of their investment, which is great. After 2 years, 3x, which is a good exit. Even better if they were compared to putting their money into FD, right? But when we talk to investors, I think we also want to know what really are they thinking about their exit, right? So what do you call as a follow-up? In fact, it's the same question that we will have when we ask about the potential exit. Is that the time period, right? We also want to know what potentially will be the time period that it will take for me to exit your company, right? Now, interestingly enough, right, for companies who fundraise on ECF, right? So if your company were to raise on equity crowdfunding, tak kisahlah pitching ke or any other platform, setakat hari ini only pitching, because later pitching will be the only company or the only platform that will have a secondary market, right? So the secondary market will be an open market where your shares can be traded. So for example, you raise money on pitching, 6 months after the fundraising, your shares can be traded on the platform. So as long as your companies do well, your investors, if they want to sell their shares, other people who miss out during the fundraising can buy your shares on the secondary market. Or people who see that your company is doing so well, but they want to buy the shares which they can't, they can go to the secondary market platform on pitching and then offer to buy shares from the market. So people yang dah beli, yang dah ada shares tu, if they see people wanting to buy, they can actually offer to sell their shares to the person. So that's another way for investors to actually exit their investment. Yeah. And that probably could take a shorter time period compared to typically 5, 7, 10 years. Yeah. But one thing which I think I can tell you that investors can, when they invest in your company, especially for equity, for shares, right? They know that they will probably need to wait between 5 to 7 years, sometimes even up to 10. And most of the time, they know that they will probably lose their money, right? So those who invest in you, they should understand that it's a long-term investment and never a short-term investment, right? Because the route towards exit, typically in a startup, companies like yourself, is 5 to 7 years, sometimes even longer, right? But with ECF and with the secondary market, the investors could potentially exit sooner than that. But of course, it's about. But then it depends on whether other people are willing to buy their shares, right? If there are no buyer, then they need to then wait, be patient until the day when you exit. Okay. But when you talk about the length of time to investors, I think investors want to listen, even though they know sometimes it does not meet the mark. But investors like to know that within 5 to 7 years, they will probably get their money back and more, right? Just not the money back, right? If they get their money back, then they're rugi lah, because the money is just there without growing, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah. So those are the 5 things which investors typically expect, and when they ask you questions, it's always in relation to these 5 things lah. Yeah. So just be prepared to address all these queries and questions that investors may have in terms of your company before they actually decide to invest in you. Okay. Any other questions in relation to this? Okay, so just a show of hands, and those in the call can also say yes or no. How many of you right now is actively fundraising, meaning that in the next 3 to 6 months, I have to fundraise? All right, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, so how many companies here? 7, yeah? 8, yeah? So out of the 8, 5 companies are actively fundraising, right? On the call? 2 out of? Right, cool. For those who are actively trying to fundraise, you have to start yesterday. Yeah. So what I mean by that is that you have to start preparing your data room. So when I talk about data room, is all the data with regards to your companies, your financial, your projection, all these questions that that I post with regards to what investors are looking for. You need to prepare all that, right? Because fundraising after this is a full time. The best scenario for founders like us is to try to close our fundraising as fast as possible. So I normally tell founders that fundraising will probably take between 6 to 8 months. But if possible, try to close it within 3 months. Because in the end, you need to go back to what you want to do, which is to build your business, not to waste time. Well, I wouldn't say waste time, not to spend a lot of time fundraising. Because fundraising can be very emotionally and resource driven and draining, right? Yeah. But before you do that, right, you need to prep yourself, right? So that's where you need to have all your data available. This particular demo day, which will then get you to prepare your deck, is also very helpful to prepare you. Yeah, but moving forward, you should have a data room, open a Google Drive and put all those information for your company in the data room, right? And that's when you will then start fundraising.
So you do any fundraising already for I suppose my PO. So basically the trading so you get people from the street.
Yeah.
I don't have enough money to go in. I make it so then one of my friends said a millionaire. Then I told him that okay, can you invest in this PO? Because the PO 36,000. So I need 31,000.
Yep.
So I invested. I told him that I will give 10% interest.
Yep.
For a year.
Yeah.
But I have to settle 3 months.
Yep.
But then so he see that potential.
Yeah.
So he asked me that. Okay, okay. Currently what's the problem? So my problem is that I don't have enough capital to say more than 20,000 a month.
Yep.
So you think about smart to get as many sales as possible and count on the capital.
Yep.
So I think this is going to be my angel investor.
Yeah. So that particular strategy again is very typical in terms of businesses like what you guys what you do, right? I.e., you want an investor to be able to fund your sales, right? So that once you get your money, you then give back the capital plus
interest,
whatever 8%, 10%, right? But it doesn't help you to grow, right?
Yes.
It helps you to do that, right? But it doesn't help you to grow, right? But I'm sure long term can you have bigger plans,
Yes.
which you cannot execute today, right? So I think what you're doing right now is good in terms of creating traction, but for you to grow to the next level, you have to think about a larger capital, which will not ask for the money back within 6 months or 1 year, right? So this is this rich friend, apart from helping you in doing the short-term sales thing, I think you should sell him the long-term plan for your company, right? And your pitch to him is this: the money that he invests in your company for whatever percentage, right, can potentially grow 3 times, 5 times, whatever the next few years, right? So ask him to think long term as compared to short term, right? Of course, the short term right now is very enticing because first of all, it's better than FD. It's quite guaranteed, yeah. So it's safe, yeah. But as an entrepreneur, right? Like I said, if you're happy doing what you do, right, then it's fine, right? But if you want to think big, right? You want to be you want to be multi-million-dollar company, right? Then you need to think about fresh capital. Yeah. Which
But maybe it's not wrong, right?
oh, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just read whatever.
Betul. Yeah. That's the way to to scale your traction, right? which later you can use as your evidence lah, that you are able to grow, right?
But whether you or not, or actually you can really do it. So that's what I see lah.
Yep, yep.
So I wanted to ask him to do this in the company.
Yep.
So, but then it's good start lah.
Yeah. Get him to familiarize with your company in terms of what you do, right? I think once you do that, 2-3 kali, then he's confident. Then you can have that talk with him and tell him that actually I can be bigger, right? And why don't you invest in my company? And I'll give you some equity, and together we can grow this company. Yeah. But yeah, I think what you're doing right now is something that you probably need to do, right?
Yes.
Because without that, banks are not going to bankroll you, right? Then this person is like the angel to you, lah.
Yes.
Ini baru angel. Oh,
Hindi lang.
Okay, yep. Yep. Yes, salary. Okay, cool. So first of all, then, I don't think asking founders not to take salary is the best way to grow a company, right? Because in the end, founders need to be happy to survive, right? So let me just share with you in terms of what we do at WTF, right? Watchtower and Friends, right? So I know when we invest 50K for 8%, come on, 50K, let's not kid ourselves. It does not pay a lot, right? But enough for a number of months, and that's why we're taking a huge risk. Say, for example, 50K, the lorry, right? So the lorry, there were 2 founders, but the lorry wanted to use the 50K to employ the first employee, which is the technical person, the technology guy, to build the app, right? So Nadir and Chihao, I think we were lucky in the sense that they don't need money from the 50K. They had enough money on their own because they were working before this. Yeah. But once we put money, both of them agreed that they have to quit their job because they want to focus on the lorry, right? So for them, I think we were lucky in the sense that for them as founders, they already have prepped themselves. They have saved up at least 3 to 6 months of salary. Maybe if they pay themselves 3,000 ringgit per month, they have around 20,000 ringgit for them for the next 6 months. With 50,000 ringgit, they approach that 50K to actually pay for their first MVP, right? By employing the first tech person, right? From there, the next 4 months is all about scaling. So if I can tell you, right? So in their industry, just to give you an example, right? In their industry, right, they are servicing lorry drivers. And you know, back those days, even today, lorry drivers are merata-rata. For you to actually employ a lorry driver, it's easy. You buka dia rumah, you pergi the nearest pokok, and there will be advertisement for lorry, right? And you call them. Dia kata harga macam ni. Tapi bila you dah do the business, rupanya harga tu dah bertukar, dah naik. So there were no discipline in the lorry punya services, right? So what the lorry did was that they urbanized the lorry punya ecosystem, where everyone can be in the system and every of the pricing is done according to the market punya. So that's why there's no surprise if Amira book a lorry, masa hari tu, at the end of the day, she also paid harga tu, right? So very disciplined. But to get all these lorry drivers in to use it, how? So what the lorry did, right? Nadia and how did, kan? So in the beginning, they employed 1 tech guy and 1 person to help them. What they did every weekend, right? They actually convened a teh tarik roti canai session with all the lorry drivers. So they call every single lorry. So that's why when people say that building this business dengan software, oh, I built it, everyone will come. We all know that it doesn't, right? We all know that for us to build, there are the unsexy work that we need to do. So what Nadia and Chow did, for every week, they collect all the numbers yang dekat pokok, dekat tiang, kat mana, call them, bawa dia orang dekat kedai mamak and belanja dia orang teh tarik roti canai and present to them the lorry idea, right? So at that juncture, it's all the founders doing all the donkey work together with the small team they have. Once they have that, they onboard them on the platform. People like you and I use, traction happened very fast. And that's when KK Fund, the Japanese VC, came in and gave them RM500,000. And lepas tu, teruslah sampai hari ni lah. Yeah. So apa tu? So like I said, the 50,000 ringgit in the end was enough if we spend it correctly and precisely. But my risk is this. There are not many founders macam diorang, right? And in those cases, and again, out of 50 plus, I think I lost 30 plus companies. So 30 plus companies, kali 50K, then you can imagine how much money we lost lah, right? But the ones that we managed to berjaya, it pays off all those yang gagal, right? So that's our game as early investor. Any other questions? Yep. 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 So so we can differentiate that between exit for investors and exit for founders, right? So exit for investors usually happens during the cycle of fundraising. That's the most typical exit for investors lah. Contohnya macam when I invest in the lorry, my exit was after their third round of fundraising, I exit. Yeah, because other investors wanted more equity. Yeah, so when they want more equity, after putting in the initial money to the lorry, but they want more equity, then they look at the cap table and they saw that, oh, Watchtower and Friends ada some equity, why don't I offer them to buy out their equity? So we sold our equity to the incoming investors. So that's a typical way of investors to exit, be it angel investor, be it accelerator program, in fact, some VCs too. So some VCs can actually exit by way of being bought out by other bigger VC, right? So that's typical for a VC using multiple rounds, right? But then there are also other ways to exit for investors, i.e. merger acquisition, yeah, or even public listing, right? So that's for investors. The question that then is for founders. How do you exit? Founders is the last person to exit, right? As founders, we know that our responsibility is first our investors. Lepaskan diorang dulu, barulah kita. So contoh macam pitching, I got to ensure all my investors get their money back, right? Not just their money back, but more than that, and barulah cash in myself. Yeah, but it could happen at the same time. Contohnya, one investment bank one day contohnya kata, you know what, Sam, we like what you guys are doing. We have all the technology that we want to do. And we see the market that you guys are doing and we want to tap into this market. I want to buy pitching for 200 juta, contohnya, right? So valuation pitching right now, I can share with you is 45 million, right? So if someone wants to buy me at 200 million ringgit, hell yeah, take it, right? So I can give back the at least three times, what, 4 times, 45 kali 200, so nearly 5 times, yeah, 4.5. Punya X to all my investors, and there is a balance for me and cash. Then I can exit together. So all of us exit. And Pitchin now has a new owner, this particular investment bank, contohnya, right? So that's why when I say about exit, it's about investor, right? And then barulah the founders, right? So if founders wants to exit, normally all the investors say, I want to follow. And because if founders exit, then I'm stuck. Who's going to run the company, right? So typically when founders exit, everyone exit. Yeah, but usually what you will see is that investor, some of them exit first, barulah the founders. In the case of the lorry, kan, we are the only investor yang exit. All the other investors are stuck there because they are waiting for the next round, the next round. Now, what could happen is that kan, if the lorry, contohnya, of course, we do not wish for it, right? But if the lorry contoh satu hari kan, gagal, right? Every one of them will have to anggap investment tu as zero lah, lose their money lah. And the only person that make money is kita orang lah. Yeah. So that's why investment ni pun, that's why investor pun ada jenis-jenis dia, right? Macam kita orang, we prefer to invest in early stage. VC tak suka because the risiko sangat-sangat tinggi, right? But kita orang suka because when exit happen, we are the first to come out. Yeah. But the bigger ones, they will invest after you guys mature, dah ada sedikit contohnya evidence yang you guys akan berjaya, then diorang akan invest, right? So it's an interesting game lah. I should not say game lah because we're playing with money, right?
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun.
Kalau untuk kami dia ada pesawat ini kami kita masuk.
Yep.
Dan tujuan saya nanti seperti apa? Mungkin ada ini. Kami nak duit banyak tahu macam mana.
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, right? One day your company raised 5 million, right? So investors put in 5 million. Depending on your investors, right? Some VCs, when they invest and they will put money because they agree to invest, but their money will be transferred to you based on KPI. Yeah, milestone. Yeah, milestone, right? So you reach your milestone, I keluarkan duit. You reach your milestone, I keluarkan duit. If you don't reach your milestone, then I don't keluarkan duit, right? And so forth. Some investors, contohnya in equity crowdfunding, if you raise 5 million daripada orang ramai, once your campaign finishes, we give you the 5 million straight away. And then the investors, all of us, semayang ramai-ramai, doakan you berjaya. How you use your money is based on what you promise investors, right? So you're going to spend X here, Y here, Z there, right? But investors takkan campur tangan dalam day-to-day operation. However, if you raise money from VC, they will take a board seat, right? So as you know, when you take a board seat, they will have some say in terms of how the company is run on a day-to-day operation, right? In fact, some VC will ensure that if you were to sign any check above 100 million ringgit, above 100,000 ringgit, they will countersign. So they ensure that you will spend the money appropriately, right? But the day-to-day operation is really to the company. But again, it based on who you fundraise from. If you were to fundraise from VC and they take a board seat, they will probably put some terms where if you were to issue any check more than 50K, they have to countersign. Oh, okay. So for example, if this exit happen kan, so contohnya the lorry punya example, right? So when I exit, it's not the lorry yang bayar ke I. It's the incoming investor yang bayar ke I. Right? Yes, they bought my shares. Right? So duit tu tak pergi pada you. Duit tu pergi pada I. Yeah, because they bought my shares, right? Now, similarly with what they call an acquisition, macam our friend Inside Scoop, right? So they bought, I forgot how many millions of the company. So a portion of it goes to the founders, which is the husband and wife, right? And the portion of it goes to the company, for the company to use to grow further, right? Yeah. So in those scenario kan, it's not you paying. However, if you are doing very, very well, right? Contohnya, you're doing very, very well. It's 5 years already. You look at your bank, you see I have like 10 million ringgit balance, right? you feel that, you know what, I think I want to take back all the shares that I offered to my investors. So you can tell me, hey, Sam, I have money, you invested 3 years ago, 1 million ringgit. Here, I have 3 million ringgit. Do you want to exit? I give you 3 million ringgit, you give me back my shares. In that scenario, you are the person yang create the exit for me. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So it depends, right? I think that there is a situation where the product eventually can morph into several other things, right? It depends now, right? I don't think there is a hard and fast rule. I think every company will have its different ways of doing it. For example, if you look at Grab, right? Grab have multiple products, right? They now own a grocery after they bought over Jai Grocer, right? They now have a digital bank, for example, right? So I don't think investors are very hard on forcing companies to focus on one product. I think what you will see investors asking companies to focus on one product first, especially when it's still very early. So before you even try to do XYZ, make sure ABC is done very well. Then you offer XYZ. That's the only scenario I can see why investors want companies to focus on one product first. After they are doing this well, and then yes, you should create more revenue stream for your company. Yep. Yep.
Takes time, yeah. Maybe about 3 years to sunset.
Yep.
But other product, other service can make more money.
So other service related to the main product?
No.
Okay. Yep.
So,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So, new things, the market is not ready yet.
Yep.
Things happen.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
investors will invest or not based on your experience.
Okay, so my own experience, right, is that it depends on the investor, right? I would say the majority of them will not invest because for them, the hero is the main product. So if this main product is not doing what it's supposed to do, then why am I investing, right? But there are other investors who are more risk takers, and they feel that my money could help the main product to grow, to be developed, then I could. So I'm not really giving an answer, to be very honest, right? Yeah. It depends. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so that's why if you approach me again based on the main product, right? So I'm asking you again, am I investing in this main product or the secondary product or the second product, right? Then it will confuse me, right?
Yeah.
So then my question will then be, should we focus on the second product because it's making money? Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's true. Betul. Yeah. But this is what I can tell you right now. A lot of investors they want to invest in a product that has no IP, and all that, right? I think services sometimes what is I wouldn't say bad, but what is not investable about services is that it's something easy for someone to replicate, for example. And then you find yourself in a competition in terms of pricing, right? Everyone will then cut prices just to get people to use their services, right? So that's where I think services are probably not something that a lot of investors look at, right? But I do get you that for some companies who actually are developing a product, in the meantime, while the product is being developed and whatnot, they want to make money because they want to pay themselves, right? So that's why they also do servicing. So I guess in that scenario, right, some investors are happy to support that as long as the main product is still a focus, right? what people fear is that in the end, can the company forget about this or find it so difficult and then later just focus on this? Yeah. 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 Betul. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. We just need to explain to investors, right? Yeah. So as long as we're being very upfront, and then you can tell investors this main product will probably take how length of time to fully develop it, then I think investors are happy to invest, right? Because they do understand that a lot of some of this product can require a lot of R&D muscle for them to develop, right? So in the meantime, you probably need to survive. And you know,
One more thing. Investor looking on data, for example, we do a research from the research become a result thing. What market expecting and so on. So if the investor invest based on the data,
well, data to me is just support, right? And again, data is important, right? As long as the data shows that there's a tendency of people using this or potentially using your product or services, then it helps, right? That actually is sort of like will be a good evidence for investors to invest. Whether later that data will translate into actual user, we don't know, right? Yeah, but it's any support that we can use in terms of helping us to decide whether to invest or not is usable, right?
Okay.
Yep.
When the investor invest, the agreement kata in 1 year, then you exit with certain notification.
Yep.
So during this time, the founder tak perlu pay anything
Yep.
along the line ke, even
Yep.
though profit naik ke apa.
Tak ada dia. Yeah.
So that means there need to be agreement cadangnya like the when the exit will
Yeah.
take place.
So typically again, when you see this can, the shares that investors will take are typically RCPS. Yeah. Redeemable Comfortable Preference Shares. Ataupun RPS, Redeemable Preference Shares. So RPS dengan RCPS. RPS is a very clean exit. Contohnya, if you offer equity and the investor agree to do RPS, what you're actually asking the investor is that upon X amount of year, 3 years, 5 years, I will give you money back and the agreed percentage of the money that I will give you back, right? So that's RPS. So within 3 years, whether you guys, even if you guys are doing so well and the investor feel that I still want to remain in your company because you guys are growing so well, I need to get out. Because the RPS enforces the rule that within X number of years, the investor will be bought out by the founders of the company, right?
Jadi RPS.
Yeah. Now, RCPS is different. RCPS gives the investor an option whether to convert to ordinary shares if they do not choose to exit. Yeah. So if they choose to exit, then yes, you get back your shares. If they don't choose to exit at the time period where the exit is supposed to happen, then they convert to become ordinary shares. Yeah. When they become ordinary shares, diorang ni sama level dengan founders. If they are preference shares, they are first in line, meaning that any exit, any apa-apa, even if your company tutup, any money yang ada dalam company, the first people to be paid back is the preference shareholders. Yeah, the ordinary shareholders, i.e. kita and the other investors are the last. After semua orang lepas, barulah kita lepas. Barulah kita. Yeah. Yeah. So RCPS or RPS. Tetapi if you want to offer ordinary shares, then investors just wait lah. Wait until the day when an exit can happen. Right? Yeah. Especially can technology companies, they prefer ordinary shares because they don't know when they can exit, right? But for VC, tak kira lah technology company, well, VC invest only in technology companies, right? VCs, they will do RCPS. They will never do ordinary shares. Agri-tech.
Yeah.
So myself, ada tapi very small, in agro-vest. Yeah, agro-vest. So they sell, they do, alamak, yang tanam sayuran,
Hydroponic.
yes, right, yeah, aquaponic, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Just owning something. but
Yeah.
it's not-
Yeah, agrotech. So apart from so we sign off ordinary shares, I think so. Yeah. But every month, someone will deliver me fresh vegetables. Every month. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Actually, it's good. Yeah. Yeah. So it has been already berapa bulan lah. So every month lah. Every month someone will deliver fresh vegetables. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, good luck in your preparing for your demo day. Like I said, I believe you guys are assigned mentor. Make full use of them, right? Especially in preparing your deck, right? You got 5 minutes, not a lot of time, right? Especially those and first time presenting. I think first time saja dah stage fright, like oh shit, right? Right? So it's very different, especially if you have a lot of people watching you, right? It can be sometimes a big punya ask lah, especially for those yang tak pernah pitch, right? So my advice is practice before the day, practice with your friends, especially those yang maybe first time dengar apa you buat, right? So they can give you honest feedback. Don't practice to your spouse. They will probably say good job, right? Because they don't want you to marah-marah orang, right? But yeah, practice lah, and then hopefully the day two will happen, good for you. Yeah. Right. Thanks, everyone.